Hey up, it's Steve, the old Yorkshire geek, and I'm here just to look at an article I've stumbled across. This is from Screen Rant. It's about Star Trek Enterprise, and apparently, as we all know, Star Trek Enterprise only ran for 4 seasons, and then it was cancelled before season 5 could go into production. And they had lots of plans for season 5. Apparently, they were going to be Enterprise. We're going to have a huge refit with a secondary hull added. Apparently. Commander Shran were going to become a member of the crew full time. Apparently, that's what I've heard. And this, what I'm going to read about now, which I didn't know. So let's have a look at this article, shall we? But before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe, share the videos, drop a comment, hit the notification bell if you're subscribed already. Explore the description for links for my social medias and my books and merchandise and stuff like that. Right, so let's have a look at this article, shall we? Here it is. There we are from Screen Rant. I'm not appearing on screen today because I just can't be bothered. So there. So you'll have to put up with my dulcet tones. Anyway, here we go from Screen Rant. I'm glad Star Trek Enterprise Season 5's shocking to pole plan didn't happen. And there she is, the lovely Jolene Blalock as T'Pol. This is from John Orquiola. Cool name. I don't know, I say it every time. He's got a very Star Trek name, hasn't he? There could have been an episode called Orquiola. Just reminds me of Aquiel, which is a rubbish episode, but never mind. Right, here he goes. This is he's writing in the first person. I'm glad the shocking plan for T'Pol, Jolene Blalock in Star Trek Enterprise Season 5 didn't happen, he says. Star Trek Enterprise was cancelled just as it was finding its footing in Season 4. Season 4 was really good. It kind of, more than any other season, it tried to answer questions that were raised in TNG and the original series. It was trying to, shimmy into the original series with the formation of the alliance that would become the Federation and other stuff, learning about Vulcan and all that. But anywho, leading up to the Romulan War. The 22nd century set prequel retconned Captain Jonathan Archer's, Scott Bakula's, NX-01 as the first Starship Enterprise. Sub-Commander T'Pol, because remember in the motion picture we'd seen all the Enterprises on the screen. We were told all those ships were called Enterprise. And obviously the NX-01 wasn't in there because it started the motion picture was made 20 years or whatever before Star Trek Enterprise. Sub-Commander T'Pol predated Mr. Spock, Leonard Nimoy, as the first Vulcan science officer to serve aboard the Enterprise. She wasn't the first Vulcan officer to serve on a Starfleet ship, though. We are told that in Enterprise. But they generally didn't last very long because Vulcans and humans didn't mix back then. We smell. Humans smell. Anyway. Like Spock, T'Pol also doubled as Enterprise's first officer. Star Trek Enterprise's controversial series finale, These Are the Voyagers, left T'Pol's story open-ended. These Are the Voyagers established that, like the rest of Captain Archer's bridge crew, T'Pol served aboard Enterprise for 10 years. Enterprise's series finale saw T'Pol endure the death of her former paramour, Commander Trip Tucker, Connor Trinier. Trip didn't die. Don't get me started about These Are the Voyagers. While I don't hate the episode as much as some people do, I think of it as apocryphal because, spoilers, it all turned out to be a holodeck simulation. So I'm thinking, it's not technically history. Anyway, it was the last known tragedy among a series of unfortunate events in T'Pol's life. Had Star Trek Enterprise Season 5 happened, T'Pol would have been faced with an existential crisis. And here we go, Star Trek Enterprise Season 5 would have revealed T'Pol is half Romulan. And I don't mind that. This would have answered some questions, but also caused problems. And we've got some pictures of her. There she is looking very sweaty. There she is looking very actiony, and there she is looking up at Archer. I think that's Archer, looks like him. Kind of angrily, and there she is being T'Pol. And there she is with Tucker, the man she loved. Anyway, whatever. As detailed in a video about Star Trek Enterprise Season 5's plans by Bullets and Blockbusters on YouTube, Never heard of it. T'Pol would have... That's the trouble with YouTube, isn't it? It's so vast and there's that many channels and accounts. You're not going to learn of them all, are you? Like my little channel is hidden amongst, all the billions of other channels. That's why I never get any views. But anyway, plus I'm rubbish. Where were we? Bullets and Blockbusters on YouTube. T'Pol would have been revealed to be half Romulan. Enterprise had already introduced T'Pol's mother, Teles, the lovely Joanna Cassidy. She's been a very attractive Romulan, I must admit. And even her second foremother, Tamir, played by Jolene Blaylock in the episode Carbon Creek. But Enterprise Season 5 would have finally introduced T'Pol's father, who would have been a Romulan. This would canonically establish T'Pol as half Vulcan and half Romulan. Check out Bullets and Blockbusters video below. Oh, there it is. So if you want to check that out, it's there. There is logic to Star Trek Enterprise Season 5's plan to make T'Pol half Romulan. T'Pol often behaved unlike a typical Vulcan throughout Star Trek Enterprise, and she exhibited bursts of emotion numerous times. It kind of got more and more as it went on. Particularly after Season 3, because she got affected by, I forgot the name of it, the stuff that they had to coat the Enterprise with to survive in the Delphic Expanse. I've forgotten the name. That affected her. But she still did, have little outbursts of emotion. We know that Vulcans are not emotionless. Sometimes they do struggle to keep their emotions in check, because they are a very volatile race. They nearly extincted themselves, if that's a word, because of their passions and all that, and their emotions. And it's a merit to the Romulans that they didn't do the same. But anyway, T'Pol being half Romulan would have been a hand-wave explanation for her passionate side. T'Pol's father, revealed to be Romulan, would have also deepened Enterprise Season 4's story of the Romulan Star Empire's attempts to gain control of Vulcan. Well, I suppose, maybe, I don't know, but it would have been an adjacent story, wouldn't it? Maybe connected to it, maybe not, who knows? Depends how they handled it, doesn't it? In Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, Saavik, she was supposed to be half Romulan, so they've kind of borrowed that, and they decided not to do it in the end, but they've kind of which is why we see Saavik having little outbursts of emotion. But they've kind of borrowed that, haven't they, from Star Trek 2, and they would have put it into Enterprise, which is fine, I think it is anyway. Right, John goes on. Although I'd have loved to see Star Trek Enterprise Season 5 and understand what showrunner Manny Koto intended by making T'Pol half Romulan, I'm ultimately glad it didn't happen. T'Pol was the unfortunate subject of several lurid storylines that traded on Jolene Blaylock's physical beauty, rendering T'Pol into a sex object. I've got to admit, it kind of did. Not kind of, it did. Making T'Pol half Romulan sounds like a petty justification for the questionable way T'Pol was depicted throughout Enterprise. I have no idea what you're talking about, mate. I don't know how that would... You're saying T'Pol's a sex object, and making a Romulan is like a justification for that. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But anyway... T'Pol already endured tragedy and torment, from being afflicted with Panar syndrome to being physically and psychically assaulted. Star Trek Enterprise heaped misfortune on T'Pol and revealed that her father was alive, and a Romulan working to subjugate Vulcan could have been a bridge too far. I'm guessing that's what they're saying in that Bullets and Blockbusters episode, as I said, which I've not seen. Anyway. It makes sense as a follow-through to Enterprise's established stories, but it also strips T'Pol of her dignity, pride, and sense of self as a Vulcan. Not necessarily. Spock was half human, but he still had his dignity and pride and sense of self as a Vulcan, didn't he? Just because she's half Romulan doesn't mean she couldn't do the same. It'd probably be easier for her to feel more Vulcan, but anyway. Oh, here we go. Oh, they mentioned this. I should read articles beforehand, shouldn't I? T'Pol not becoming half Romulan is like Saavik in Star Trek 2. There's the late Kirstie Alley as Saavik in Star Trek 2. Star Trek Enterprise Season 5, Enterprise's Season 5 plan for T'Pol is reminiscent of another Vulcan who was originally intended to be half Romulan, Lieutenant Saavik Kirstie Alley in Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. Saavik, as a half Romulan, would have explained her own emotional behaviour, like crying at Captain Spock's funeral. However, Saavik being half Romulan was never mentioned on screen in Star Trek II, thus it never became canon. I think it is mentioned in the novelisation, or I could be wrong. I have read it, but it's been a while. Or it might be just alluded to. I've seen it somewhere. Note, an alternate universe version of T'Pol, who is evidently full Vulcan, appeared in Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5 and was voiced by Jolene Blaylock, credited as Jolene. How do you know she's full Vulcan? Because it never even mentioned it in that Lower Decks episode. But anyway, at least I don't think it did. Could be wrong. In Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, Robin Curtis took over the role of Lieutenant Saavik from Kirstie Alley. Director Leonard Nimoy instructed Curtis to portray Saavik as a full Vulcan, further neutralising the idea that Saavik was half Romulan. I like Robin Curtis. She's a fine actress. She appeared in Next Generation, again as a Vulcan. Or was she a Romulan? Or was she a Vulcan pretending to be a Romulan? I can't remember. It was the episode Gambit. But I didn't like her as Saavik. She was only doing as she was told, obviously, to be being full Vulcan. So she was very emotionless. But apart from one part in Star Trek, I think the end of Star Trek 3. Yes, it's the end of Star Trek 3, where she kind of looks awkward when Spock looks at her. Because they did it on the Genesis planet when Spock went through his pond fire. But apart from that, like I say, she was very emotionless. She was totally unlike Kirstie Alley's version of Saavik. But anyway, like Saavik, T'Pol remains a full Vulcan since the plan to alter her history did not take place. This is probably the only positive of Star Trek Enterprise Season 5's cancellation. I disagree. Yes, I entirely disagree with John Orquiola in this. I think it would have been an interesting storyline to have T'Pol become half Romulan, and it would kind of explain why she struggled with her emotions. Her mother even said in Season 4 that her emotions have always been close to the surface. And she has always struggled with them. So I think that would have been an interesting storyline that could have an overarching storyline for Season 5. Her finding out about her Romulan heritage, or half Romulan heritage, and coming to terms with it, and by the end accepting it and moving on as a Vulcan, like Spock did. Spock did with his human half. He moved on and lived his life as a Vulcan, and T'Pol would have done that as well, I think. So there we go. So sorry, John, Mr. John Orquiola. You might have a cool name, but I think you're wrong there. But in my opinion, but it didn't happen anyway. So that's all by the by, isn't it? It's all just fan fiction now, isn't it? But it'd have been cool. I'd have loved to see Enterprise Season 5. I did ask Connor Trinier and Dominic Keating. I saw them at a convention. I did ask them about if Season 5 were ever going to happen. But this was like 10 years, a little bit less. I think it was about 8 years after Enterprise had been cancelled. And it's a bit long now for them to bring it back. And they were right. And it is. Bring it back in animated form. That's what I say. Do an Enterprise animated series. A serious one. But not like Lower Decks. A serious one. That'd be cool. But they won't. Anyway, because Star Trek's all up in the air at the moment. I think it is. Anyway, so we'll leave that there. I just found that an interesting article that I completely disagree with. So, right. So anyway, I will reiterate, don't forget to like and subscribe, share the videos, drop a comment. I'm looking into camera. I don't know why. I haven't got the camera on. I'm an idiot. Share the videos, drop a comment, hit the notification bell if you're subscribed already. Explore the description for links for all that stuff. And we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. Wherever you are, look after each other. And until next time, you ready for the big thumbs up on screen? I'll see you there. That old Yorkshire geek with stories.